All right, 3 weeks down here in our fantasy football leagues for 2019. We're moving into week 4. We've had a few situations that just make no sense. We've had a few guys kind of overperform the first few weeks. And then you have a few of your studs out there, your stars that you really counted to carry your football team that have just played like shit. What's going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Welcome back to the Draft.com studios, where today we're talking running backs, who we starting and who we sitting for week 4. It's been a crazy couple of weeks here to start off the season. Been some crappy play calling by some coaches, some situations that really haven't panned out like many had expected, and some studs that are really underperforming. But before we get into the names here for week 4, what do we always do? We're being transparent on this channel. So make sure you hit that like button for somebody at least being honest on the internet for once in their life. But how did we do last week in week 3? Here's the numbers. Last week, we talked about a total of 45 running backs to give a start or sit designation. We had 27 correct guesses, and that was a total of 60% correct. Some of our biggest hits, we had Miles Sanders as a start, Frank Gore as a start. We had Kerryon Johnson listed as a sit, and James Conner also listed as a sit. Neither one of them really did a whole lot this week. Some of our biggest misses: Sony Michel, thanks for nothing. You've absolutely sucked so far this year. LaShawn McCoy, we kind of thought his ankle was held on by a couple pieces of chewed up bubble gum, but apparently he was good to go, had a great game. Philip Lindsay, didn't see that one coming either, with the timeshare that he had been going through with Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman banged up a little bit throughout the game, gave Lindsay a few extra touches, and he definitely capitalized. And then Tony Pollard. A lot of people were really hoping for that huge game from Zeke Elliott. Tony Pollard kind of came in garbage time and just racked up all the yards, also rushing for over 100. So he was another miss this week. However, for as crazy as the week was, not a very bad number, 60% correct here week 3. But now we're moving on to week 4. Who we starting and who we sitting, that's what we're talking about, and we're doing it right now. Kicking off Thursday Night Football, Eagles and Packers, and we're starting off bold, so don't let me lose you here this early. We're going to start Miles Sanders once again. Had him as a start last week. Played great, 120 total yards. Hate to see him lose those touches and goal line opportunities to a Jordan Howard. However, Jordan Howard is strictly goal line touchdown dependent at this point. The bulk of the work and the involvement in the passing game is going to go towards Miles Sanders. He's the best running back in this backfield. On paper, tough matchup going up against the Packers. However, 2 of the past 3 weeks have been torched on the ground by both Denver and Minnesota. Miles Sanders, best back here in the offense, and he's going to have that opportunity. The involvement in the passing game gives him that flex play start potential for me here in week 4. Jordan Howard, not interested in starting him. Totally goal line touchdown dependent, like I said. But this is where we get a little bold. Aaron Jones. Nobody wants to sit Aaron Jones. However, last week, if it wasn't for the couple of touchdowns, he really would have screwed your fantasy day once again. And now head coach Matt LaFleur is really trying to ruin this backfield by really doing a 50-50 split between him and Jamal Williams. So now if the carries aren't there, we're kind of relying solely on touchdowns. Not to mention, he's going up against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are only allowing 57 rushing yards total per game. Total. One of the best run defenses in all of football on a Thursday night game that could get ugly like most Thursday night games. I'm avoiding the backfield of the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Jones, and Jamal Williams. All right, moving on to Sunday, Tennessee Titans, Atlanta Falcons. Derrick Henry's going to be an obvious start here. He has the 2 biggest things that you really look for in solid fantasy running backs. Touchdown upside. He's had 3 straight games with a touchdown, and he's also got the usage. He's going to touch the ball between 15 and 20 times a game on the ground. Another decent matchup going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Derrick Henry going to be a start here in week 4. Now, Devontae Freeman is where a lot of people start to scratch their heads because they really don't know what to think of Devontae Freeman. He's had a couple tough matchups to start the year with Minnesota and Philadelphia. Got off to a slow start. His first decent matchup last week against the Indianapolis Colts, he had 16 carries for 88 yards, 5.5 yards per carry. And there's still room for him to improve, at least in the passing game. That's where they really need to get him involved. Ito Smith is questionable, may not play in this game. If he doesn't, that only bumps up the upside of a Devontae Freeman. It is a difficult matchup. The Tennessee Titans absolutely stuffed Leonard Fournette for the most part last week. Then they allowed that huge run late in the game. Devontae Freeman has that game-breaking speed. He doesn't need a whole lot of touches. He can break that big play. And if the usage continues to go in this direction, he's in for another solid fantasy day. But just don't forget, I think a lot of people out there drafted Devontae Freeman 3rd, 4th round, wherever you got him, depending on your league size, and you're expecting running back 1 numbers. You can't think like that. He's a running back 2 now. He was a running back 2 last week. He's a running back 2 again this week. A mid to low end running back 2. If you expect too much, you may be disappointed. Take him for what he is and be happy with the RB2 upside. Redskins and Giants up next, and boy, does it suck to not see Saquon Barkley's name on this list, especially for all of those out there that spent a really high draft pick on him. High ankle sprain, sounds like he could be out 4 to 8 weeks, and typically these high ankle sprains linger, so we're probably sitting closer to that 8-week time frame, and now it's the Wayne Gallman show. I know everybody get excited all at once, and I hate to burst a lot of bubbles because Wayne Gallman's probably going to be one of the top waiver claims of the week. However, do not expect Saquon Barkley type numbers from Wayne Gallman. Remember, it's Wayne Gallman. Now, I'm not saying the guy can't go out there and produce some solid numbers. It's entirely possible, but the Washington run defense looked great last week against the rushing attack of the Chicago Bears, and I'm not quick to just take Gallman off the waiver wire and throw him into my lineup. Now, listen, if you're decimated with injuries and you have no other choice, you roll with Wayne Gallman, cross your fingers, and say prayers to the fantasy gods because he needs a little bit of help here this week. The positive thing is Daniel Jones looked great in his first ever NFL career start. If he can continue that type of pace and moving the ball through the air, Wayne Gallman could have some lanes open up. But like I said, this run defense looked great against the Bears last week of the Washington Redskins. Now for the Redskins backs, Chris Thompson maybe in a deep league PPR flex, maybe at best. Adrian Peterson's super inefficient at this point, touchdown dependent, and he's not getting the touchdown. So unless you're in a full PPR league, a deeper league, 12, 14, 16 team leagues, I'm really not interested in Chris Thompson. But like I said, those deeper leagues, he has that PPR upside. We know he's going to be involved in a lot of the dump off passes and stuff from Case Keenum. It's just nothing ideal. I'm not excited about it, but Chris Thompson has that decent floor in full PPR leagues. Chargers and Dolphins up next. This one's pretty straightforward. If you have Austin Eckler, more than likely right now you're starting him. A great matchup. A little bit worried that Austin Eckler may get too much volume early in the season and he can't last. However, for right now, he's still starting here week 4. But I'm also starting Justin Jackson. That may make a few people scratch their head, at least as a flex play though, because they're playing the Miami Dolphins, who suck, and they give up over 200 yards a game on the ground. Look at what Tony Pollard and the Dallas Cowboys did last week against this Miami defense late in the game. Once the game was out of hand, they pulled Zeke, put in Tony Pollard, he put on a show. Why would they not do the same thing this week with the Los Angeles Chargers? If they can get a lead early, rest Eckler a little bit. Don't continue to run him out there and drag him into the ground. Give Justin Jackson a little bit of run in the second half. Right now, the guy is averaging almost 8 yards a carry. He's just not getting the ball very often. If he can get close to 8 yards a carry in this offense and gets a lot of that garbage points, a lot of those second half points, both of these guys could have value here in week 4. As for the Dolphins, not trusting Drake or Ballage. I mean, it doesn't really seem like anybody cares to be out there really for Miami. I mean, they'll show flashes, but then at times the defense just like whatever, and the offense just doesn't give two craps, and they're always losing, so they can never really run the ball. They're not checking down to Kenyon Drake that often. It's just disgusting. Please don't tell me you have to start any Dolphins. Raiders and Colts up next, and I'm still going to start Josh Jacobs, but I'm worried. I think he's kind of dropping from that RB2 down to that flex play upside, just until they can really solidify his usage. Now, for 3 straight weeks, his carries per game have gone down. He's not really involved in the passing game, and now we're starting to see Jalen Richard steal touches from time to time. Now, no, Jalen Richard is not start-worthy by any means because he's just not seen consistent enough volume. We're still going to start Josh Jacobs. The upside is still there. The touchdown upside is still there. But until we can really start to solidify his usage on a weekly basis, he's kind of hit that flex play territory. Still a start, just not the huge upside that a lot of people coming into the season may have expected. I was never really on the Josh Jacobs bandwagon as a bell cow workhorse running back. And so far, this far into the season, outside of week 1, has kind of struggled at times. So really want to see him start to get some more consistent usage on the ground and through the air to really boost up that upside. Also going to start Marlon Mack of the Indianapolis Colts, one of the few running backs here in the NFL that's getting close to 20 touches per game on the ground. Now, he showed up on the injury report the last few weeks with a calf issue, and it sounds like he's going to be able to play through it. He did last week and performed just fine for fantasy owners, and I expect a little bit more of the same this week. Now, the Oakland run defense is tougher to run against than they are to throw against, and Jacoby Brissett has been very serviceable as a starting quarterback there for the Indianapolis Colts. One concern, T.Y. Hilton may not be available, so they may have to rely on the run game a little bit more. Going to start Marlon Mack here in week 4 also. Carolina and Houston now, and Christian McCaffrey, obvious must start every single week, but a great matchup for him right now. The Houston Texans are allowing the second most yards per carry to opposing running backs of all teams in the NFL, so great matchup for Christian McCaffrey this week for all you owners of him out there. On the Houston side, Yeah, we're going to sit everybody. Carlos Hyde, 1 week's getting 20 touches, next week can barely touch 10. Then you got Duke Johnson, who really isn't utilized at all ever since they brought in Carlos Hyde, and also Kenny Stills, who took away a lot of the passing upside of one Duke Johnson. Until they can really solidify this backfield, I'm not starting either of these guys. Only Christian McCaffrey for me in this game. Chiefs and Lions up next in holy explosion of asterisks. And I really don't know what to say about this game until we get a little bit more clarity on the injuries in this game. Damian Williams, does he play? Missed last week. LaShawn McCoy was supposed to miss the game, but then he played and he played great, but then left early when he re-aggravated the ankle injury. Darrell Williams came in and produced just fine. That's the thing with Kansas City. We want whoever is in this backfield getting the touches, they're going to be a solid fantasy producer for your team. The problem right now, heading into the weekend, we have no idea who it's going to be. If Williams is active, McCoy is active, both of those guys flex plays at best depending on their health. Darrell Williams, I'm only interested in starting as a flex play if either Damian or LaShawn McCoy sit. So we really have to sit back, relax, find out what happens. Like I said, hopefully we have a little bit more clarity heading into the weekend. For the Lions, we got Kerryon Johnson, who's going to be back in the start column this week. He was a sit last week, worked out pretty well, didn't do a whole lot last week in week 3. This week, though, against the Kansas City Chiefs, he's going back into the lineup. Why? Well, the Chiefs allow 6.2 yards per carry and 137 rushing yards per game. That's kind of what you want to have in your lineup. As of right now, Kerryon Johnson seems to be getting the bulk of the work in this backfield in a great matchup to where they're going to have to possibly pass the ball all 4 quarters to keep pace with the Kansas City Chiefs. That can only put a little bit of potential PPR upside in there for one Kerryon Johnson. Got him back in the start column here in week 4. Browns and Ravens up now, and Nick Chubb and Mark Ingram for the most part are must-starts on a weekly basis. Difficult matchup, though, for Nick Chubb. Just because the Kansas City Chiefs found a lot of success on the ground last week against the Baltimore Ravens, don't forget a lot of that is because Patrick Mahomes has to pull defenders out of the box because the dude can throw it anywhere he wants to, as far as he wants to. The Browns still trying to find their identity. Nick Chubb's still a start, but I'm kind of tempering expectations just a little bit. Mark Ingram, though, yeah, obvious must start. We loved him in the preseason. In this offense, we knew Baltimore was going to run the ball a lot. Were we expecting 5 touchdowns in the first 3 games and averaging close to 16, 17 total touches a week? Not so much. That's some pretty good production so far for Mark Ingram. Ride him while he's hot in a matchup against the Browns at home for the Ravens. I'm going to start Mark Ingram once again here in week 4. Patriots and Bills up next, and boy, are there a whole lot of sits in this game. We got Sony Michel, who's been one of the least efficient running backs in all the NFL with 2.4 yards per carry. Now we get Rex Burkhead thrown into the mix. James White should be back with the team after missing last week's game due to the birth of his child. I mean, what do we make of this backfield? Sony's not producing, so unless he gets you a goal line touchdown at this point, he's kind of hurting your fantasy team. Rex Burkhead, he's kind of going to eat into both of the upsides of Sony Michel and James White. The only guy I would maybe think about touching is James White if Julian Edelman sits, just because I can see White being a little bit more involved in the passing game. This is a very, very stout run defense, though. The Buffalo Bills currently right now, they're ranked 8th in the NFL against the opposing runners, and I'm just not willing to try to guess which running back it's going to be this week. New England, one of the best teams in the NFL. They're going to find a way to move the ball, but who's going to be the recipient of it? Your guess is as good as mine. I'm going to sit all 3 running backs of the New England Patriots here this week. For the Bills, I don't want any part of the New England defense either. I mean, this defense is absolutely crazy. Right now, they're the number 1 defense against the run. They're allowing 37 yards rushing per game. And I had to double check the stat. It's 37 rushing yards per game that's allowed by the New England Patriots as of right now. Not going to tempt it. Gore seems to be the lead running back right now until Devin Singletary can be back to 100%. But going up against this defense, not going to test it. I'm going to sit Gore and Singletary even if he does play. Oh, it may be contagious because the Bucs and Rams, I'm sitting everybody again. Yes, even Todd Gurley this week. Why am I sitting Todd Gurley? I know he hasn't really performed up to last year's standards, and he's been decent RB2 somewhat value here so far this year, which is kind of what a lot of people expected. But this week, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers run defense, who's currently 6th in the league, not willing to risk it. How good is this run defense? Well, last week against Saquon Barkley, before he got hurt, he was only averaging 1.2 yards per carry against this run defense of Tampa Bay. They're an elite run defense. I'm not willing to risk it this week with Todd Gurley. As for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers running backs, Peyton Barber, Ronald Jones, no thanks. You pair the bad offensive line against the pass rush of the Los Angeles Rams, and it's just a recipe for disaster. Not willing to risk it this week, Peyton Barber, Ronald Jones finding their ways to the fantasy benches once again here in week 4. Seahawks and Cardinals up next. This one's pretty straightforward. Chris Carson seems to kind of have the faith of the coaching staff for Seattle still after losing yet another fumble last week. However, I think part of the reason they have some of this added confidence is because Rashad Penny is not 100% healthy. Now, there's rumors saying that Rashad Penny could be ready to go by Thursday's practice. If he can get in a few full practices, Rashad Penny could really start eating into the volume of Chris Carson, especially if he continues to have issues with fumbles. If he loses another fumble and Penny is healthy, watch out, because Penny could be taking away a bulk of the work for the Seattle Seahawks, who we already know are a very successful team on the ground. As for the Cardinals, we're still starting David Johnson. I had somebody leave a comment, I don't know if it was this week or last week, saying how much they wish they wouldn't have drafted David Johnson because he's having such a horrible year that he's killing their fantasy team. And it made me go back and look at the stats a little bit. The guy is the number 9 running back in fantasy football in almost every format. So if by having a top 10 running back is sinking your fantasy football team, what the hell's going on? Because the guy isn't going out there and putting up huge numbers, but he's very serviceable. You know he's going to be involved in the passing game. Yes, the offensive line is not great for the Arizona Cardinals, but he makes up for that in that passing game with the touchdown upside. Still going to start David Johnson. Be on the lookout for Rashad Penny. Watch those injury reports, though, because if he's healthy, wouldn't be surprised if Carson starts losing touches. 2 stout run defenses up next, Vikings and Bears. And regardless of the Bears defense, you still have to start Dalvin Cook. He's the best running back in the NFL right now, and that offense is built around the run. Is this an ideal matchup for him? No, absolutely not. Could he struggle at times? Yeah, he very well could, but he only needs a little bit of a crease, a little wiggle room, and the guy can break a big play and save your fantasy day. Just because he's playing against the Bears doesn't mean you sit Dalvin Cook. He stays in your lineup every single week. Now for the Bears, we're sitting both of these guys, David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen. Why? Well, Cordero Patterson is getting run in the backfield, and who knows why? What is up with the play calling of Matt Nagy? The best running back in this backfield is David Montgomery, and it's not even close. What's crazy, though, is the usage. It's totally hit or miss. There's no flow to the running game. They can't be consistent with anything, and until they do, I don't care about the upside until I see consistent touches from a week-to-week basis. Multiple weeks from David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen, I'm not tempting it. They're both going to be sits for me here in week 4. Jags and Broncos up next, and we're still going to start Leonard Fournette, even though the running game of the Jacksonville Jaguars looked atrocious for all but one running play last week against Tennessee. But it was an ugly game, a Thursday night game. I'm not going to hold it against him too much. Leonard Fournette still has that upside, and now he gets a little bit more because of his pass-catching upside. He's being utilized that way a little bit more this year than he has been in years past. So far, through 3 games, has 14 receptions. That really helps him on a weekly basis have that safe floor. Once again, he's going to get you close to 15 touches plus on the ground, and now a little bit of usage in the passing game. I'll still start Leonard Fournette. I'm also going to start Phillip Lindsay of the Denver Broncos. What did we see from Phillip Lindsay last week? Kind of what we saw a lot of last year. Now, Royce Freeman missed some snaps with some injury in this game. They went to Phillip Lindsay, and he really capitalized on them. Once again, had 20 touches on the ground. He's had 4 receptions in each of the last 3 games. Another one of these games where he may not find huge success, efficiency-wise on the ground, but the availability in the passing game, especially if Royce Freeman is limited at all with any injury concerns, could be another solid PPR day for Phillip Lindsay. He's in the start column. Royce Freeman, can't really start him as of yet. He was banged up a little bit in week 3, so we need to pay attention to the injury reports on him. But being that he's mostly rushing upside, dependent, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars, we're going to limit expectations and put him on the sit list. Cowboys and Saints up next. This one's pretty straightforward. If you have Zeke Elliott, you're starting Zeke Elliott. And a lot of the owners are still waiting for that big, huge Zeke Elliott type of game. Unfortunately, Tony Pollard came in last week, mopped up all the garbage points, and really limited that huge game from Zeke Elliott. And now people are quick to say, hey, do we need to start Tony Pollard? No, not unless the Cowboys play against the Miami Dolphins every single week. This one, still going back to Zeke Elliott, sitting Tony Pollard. Alvin Kamara, a lot of people were worried about him also once Drew Brees went out. What was going to happen to Kamara? How successful was he going to be? He is such a big part of this game plan, it doesn't really matter. Not only on the ground, on the goal line, or through the air, Alvin Kamara is so heavily involved, he's got to be somebody in your lineup every single week. Latavius Murray has had 13 touches through 3 games. I don't expect a whole lot from Latavius Murray unless something happens to Alvin Kamara, and may the fantasy gods please not let anything happen to Alvin Kamara. This one's kind of obvious, starting Zeke and Kamara in week 4. Monday Night Football, you got the Bengals and the Steelers. This one's pretty straightforward. You got Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals. Seems to be back to 100% health, and now he's come out and even told the fans, hey, I need to play better. Expecting bigger things from Joe Mixon coming forward. He's got that touchdown upside on the ground, and he's also involved in the passing game. If he's 100% healthy, not too worried about Giovanni Bernard taking away any touches. We'll have to get Joe Mixon back in our lineups. James Conner's, on the other hand, been one of these guys to really underwhelm in 2019. A lot of owners disappointed with what they've gotten so far from James Conner. And now no Big Ben. Mason Rudolph under center. Can he move the ball down the field through the air to open up some more running lanes for James Conner? This is the best possible option for it to happen. He's going up against a very, very weak run defense of the Cincinnati Bengals, giving up on average 168 yards per game on the ground. If ever there was a chance for James Conner to kind of rebound and break back out this season, it could happen in week 4. Got him back as a start. Jalen Samuels, not somebody who's overly utilized. Right now, James Conner is the only back we're starting for the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, those are all my starts and sits for the running back position here, week 4 fantasy football. Let me know down in the comment section what you think. Do you disagree with anything? Do you see anything a little bit differently? Remember, I'm not up here trying to tell anybody what to do. We're supplying perspective to try to help make these decisions on game day a little bit easier. Let's do that together. Let's do that as a community. Really look forward to interacting with you guys. Make sure you go check out our website, thefantasyheadliners.com. A lot of other great information over there. Don't miss out on any of that. But we'll talk to you guys later. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks.